everybody. My name's Maria Demopoulos and I am the CEO at the Settlement Council of Australia. Welcome to this particularly special Reconciliation Week edition of our podcast, hosted by the Settlement Council. I want to start firstly, and this is particularly important to me as a migrant to this country, to acknowledge that I am living on unceded lands. The Settlement Council of Australia is on the lands of the Ngunnawal and the Ngambri peoples of the ACT. So I pay my respects to their elders, both past and present. At the moment, though, I am sitting on the lands of the Bunurong here in the western suburbs of Melbourne. But look, before I go any further, I get a little bit sort of tongue-tied whenever I am seated in the presence of this extraordinary woman. Commissioner Sue-Ann Hunter, wow, I could read your bio for a very, very long time and still not even touch the surface of the extraordinary achievements, the examples of leadership and activism that you've had over so long. But can I start by saying that Adjunct Professor Sue-Ann Hunter, who is the Deputy Chair and Commissioner of the Yurruk Justice Commission, she's also an adjunct Professor of Global and Engagement at Federation Uni and a member of the National Centre for Reconciliation, Truth and Justice Advisory Board. You're a proud Wurundjeri and Yurai Ilam woman. You're my friend. You're an extraordinary human being. Sue-Ann Hunter, thank you so much, particularly during Reconciliation Week when I know how busy you are. I know that you're nearing the end of the Yurruk Commission, so the report writing must be a frantic activity right now. But truly, we are blessed and so grateful to have you here today. Hello, hello.
Hi, Maria. Thanks. You're always very kind with your words, but I think it's just what we do for our people, and the fight continues and will continue. So I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm on my traditional lands, the lands of the Wurundjeri, and pay my respects to elders past and present, and to other Aboriginal people listening throughout this podcast.
Sue-Ann, I've told you a little bit about the Settlement Council of Australia and how proud I am to be part of that team. I'm obviously keen to keep exploring the importance of that relationship between multicultural and refugee communities and, of course, First Nations people of this land. But to maybe start with a bit more of a personal reflection, I certainly know who you are, but can you tell the audience listening in and watching today who you are? Where do you hail from?
Oh God, I'm from everywhere, I think. So as you mentioned, I'm a Wurundjeri Ngurai Ilam Wurrung woman. That's who I am. Like, that's my identity. On my mum's side, we're Scottish and Irish, and I acknowledge that heritage as well. But whilst I'm on these stolen lands, I acknowledge particularly the role that the colonies played in the dispossession and dispersion of our people. And so I guess I was brought up from a young age, really been told that I'm Aboriginal, but not really understanding Aboriginality until, an incident in grade 2, and which I'm not going to go into at school, but really made me think about, told that Captain Cook discovered Australia, and then going home and Dad putting on the, Our Secret Country video, and, probably traumatised in however old you are in grade 2 by that. But understanding that we're not the same, and that we have to fight for everything we've got, and being called names in, having to move a lot. There's 6 kids in my family, and also having to be heard in the family, and also being strong enough not to come to systems that could easily have taken us away. I don't know if anybody's had the conversation with their parents about what would you do if the welfare come around, but, I asked my mum that recently, and that was a conversation my mum and dad had. And, I reflect on the struggles of my nan, for instance, was the last woman born on Corranderk Mission. And I just reflect a lot on those that come before us, but also I think about the future. I don't, I guess I don't do any of this for me or my generation, because we're always looking ahead. I have a beautiful 14-year-old daughter who I absolutely adore, and I just don't want her to have to put up with the same as everybody else that has in the community. I just want the best for our community, and I want to see us happy and healthy and in a space where we're safe and nurtured and loved. And that's where I really come from. I mean, your story obviously plays a part in that, but I always look backwards to look forwards, if that makes sense, to see how I can do better or what I can continue the fight for, because it was started long before me, and I hope it continues long after me. And try to hold a space where we hold people. So, and currently, I worked in out-of-home care for over 20 years with our kids, particularly in Aboriginal affairs. And then the last 4 years on the Yoorrook Justice Commission, listening to truths of our
Tell us a
people.
little bit more about that, Sue-Ann, because it is the first, is it not, across Australia? How did you come to be there?
Well, that's a story in itself. So I remember someone said to me, this is really funny. Someone said to me, oh, they're having social emotional wellbeing. They'll probably a director role. You should apply for that. And I said, well, why can't I be a commissioner? And they said, oh, well, you could, but I just thought that would suit you. So just despite people saying, that I went, no, I'm going to apply. And I think it was a long process. I didn't really understand a lot of the process. So I did a lot of deep dive and looked around the world and really studied to make sure, and spoke to Dr. Helen Milroy about her sitting on a commission and what would it be and what are the challenges, and really sunk myself into it, applied, went through the whole process. I think there was 60 and then 20 and then 5. And I remember the phone call, because I was doing some work in Adelaide, and I just it was late and I'd landed, and I booked the hotel, and it was the dodgiest hotel ever. I look over and I'll just never forget the moment, there's a spider crawling across the pillow. And I had this call, and then I was like, what? I forgot about the spider, mind you. And I just remember in that moment crying, because I was just so elated to be able to, one, get to where I've gotten to, and be, from all the time at school, you'll never amount to nothing, you'll never be anywhere, but to also represent my people in this space, right? Like,
wow,
it's just amazing. So, and then the process has been 4 years of paving a way and trying to do our best, sometimes not getting it right and being okay with that. But
so
really,
what does it mean, Sue-Ann? I mean, truth telling. I certainly grew up being told, tell the truth. The concept, when it applies to the sort of work that you're doing, can you give us a little bit of a glimpse around what does that mean to do truth telling?
I think what's helped me is, one, I'm a social worker by trade. So be able to hold space for people. Now, the stories, and I tell everybody, as the stories you hear aren't new. We know them. We've all heard them. But I think the truth telling is to deeply listen, to make a narrative of it. And when you're deeply listening so that you get justice, because we're a Truth and Justice Commission, that's the difference for me. The being able to hold space for those that come forward yet again to tell their stories, really, there's stuff you can't put into words because it's an experience and it's a moment in time. But to listen for a truth for a purpose, not just telling your truth to make people listen to a story, but telling your truth so that you have an outcome, which is a recommendation for justice for our people, is truly an amazing thing. And people would come forward and say, you've probably heard my story because it's well, no, because it's individual and it's yours, and we need to hear it, because the more we heard, the more evidence we gathered. The difference about us as a Royal Commission and these truths that we're being told is that we've recorded them. They're going to lay down in history. They make a narrative of this state. They go towards justice. This is the first time we've had those stories as evidence. And so the difference with this is it's evidence. Also, the difference with this as a Royal Commission is that we have the First Peoples Assembly who can take these and really push them forward, whether it's negotiating in a treaty, whether it's helping, move things forward in a different way than a treaty. I don't know what that looks like, but we've given them the evidence to start this process, which is, a one-off.
And a long time coming.
A long time coming. And it's only 4 years. This process needs to continue. It doesn't need to continue in the limited space of 4 years under a Royal Commission, but it does maybe need to be a bit bespoke and continue on a truth-telling, because it takes time and then more time for people to come forward. And we haven't heard everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I often hear people say, well, let's just address the distortions of truth that have preceded us. But the impact of those lies on shaping our national identity is profound. It can't be underestimated, surely. How do you think it's affected communities across Australia?
Okay, so I think I don't know if this is going to answer it, but tell me if it doesn't. If we consider framing truth-telling as the essential infrastructure for a healthy society, right? Because you're told not to lie and tell the truth and you get good, right? That's just the basic what happens. If you start, that's the start of a healthy society. So if you think about how distorted and absent truth is in the history of not only this state, but Australia, and you start addressing the ongoing harms that caused, there's the connection between the historical and the now, and you make those, to say it's like you just join the dots, right? You can have policy decisions making that are powerful to make really good outcomes for not only First Peoples, but everybody. Because remember, when you change policies and laws in this country, you don't just change them for First Peoples, you change them for everybody. And so we get chucked in the marginalised, disenfranchised, lowest socioeconomic, all of that. And if you start making laws and policies around making things better, then everybody benefits from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, wow. Yeah, I think you've just answered the question and a lot more. Sue-Ann, multicultural communities, refugee, migrant communities often say to me, look, I haven't really been part of the history. I've just arrived in this country. What can I possibly do? Is there a relationship that I need to have here? Do you see a commitment that needs to be made here from newly arrived and migrant refugee communities? Is there a relationship that we need to build further here from your perspective?
I think there is. There is, the word that I don't like saying is, good intentions, but I think a lot of people come with good intentions, but they're misunderstood. And I think that's because what I've found with multicultural communities, we have this shared experience of displacement, right? We just do. But we need to acknowledge the fundamental difference that you're living on unceded lands. And I think, we are always there at the forefront. I don't know if you've seen this as I hate the word, but activists. I think it demeans people's knowledge, but working with multicultural communities, but I don't think they really understand the foundations of this country. Because when you come in, you do these, you know what I'm talking about. So it doesn't really include First Peoples. So I think the looking at how we can understand the colonial histories, we can create bridges, really good analogy, rather than divisions, and discuss practical ways multiculturalism and organisations can move beyond performative acknowledgements to real stuff on the ground, substantive partnerships. I think one of the things I found, not just in the commission, but working, in sort of policy areas, everybody talks about what we can do. And then when it comes to the doing, everybody gets stuck. because no one wants to offend everybody, or you actually don't know what it means. And so how do we dig deeper together to move forward with multicultural communities because we do have this understanding of, you know, a bit of sameness, of understanding displacement, of understanding being, you know, the forgotten people, the trampled on people, the dispossessed, laws don't include you. We have that. How do we come together in that, but also understand that you're living on stolen lands, and how do we move forward with that?
And that experience of colonisation for many in our newly arrived communities is very pertinent, as you say. But it is that question of how we move forward. And as someone that is on a daily basis dealing with future and hope for the future, you are someone that's always extremely positive about these things. What do you see in the future? Because obviously I know you and I talked about the post-referendum and the impact that had, the terrible impact, breach of trust, you know, for so many in our communities, and particularly for First Nations communities, as I say. But you still maintain hope, Sue-Ann. What does that look like for you?
I think I have hope because I think we have to have hope. If we don't have hope, what do we have? And I think I see, and I've seen through the commission and in my work that, you know, I've previously done, and I guess one of the things is you know, surround myself with really positive Black women, right? And we want to make change. So we create spaces to make conversations for change. That's one. And I think it's not to say it's not tiring, because it takes its toll at times. But I think the work we do, and really the more I see programs and progress, and, you know, although it's slow, I see change for our people. You know, I see we have to hold on to hope, because if we don't, what have we got? And I want to hold that hope. But, you know, I'm fortunate enough that, you know, I've had opportunities to study, and, you know, I've had opportunities to do a lot of things, and I want to use that for our people. It's not a glorified, I've done this, I've done that. I'm the first person in my family to, I think I've witnessed really good outcomes, whether it be individuals or community. And I want to hold that, because that can happen for other communities, and they demonstrate genuine progress for our people. Albeit small, it's still progress. And I don't think although, you know, Auntie Jackie Huggins spoke about being, you know, tired on one of the things I saw her speak about. And I was just like, but she did say, I think you were there, Maria, a year after the referendum, it's time to lift ourselves up and get on with it. And if we don't get on with it and we don't do it, then when's it going to get done? And so I hold the hope that things will change, and it's slow progress. Who would have thought Victoria would have been negotiating a treaty, right? Who thought Kevin Rudd would ever say sorry? Not that there's a whole lot come out of it, but, you know, even that act helped heal some people. So these are all progress, and we need to keep moving forward. And we want to do it with others. We can't do this alone. It's just too much work.
And that's a very important message that we certainly at the Settlement Council of Australia want to convey to our constituent groups, to our members, that if you want to move beyond the performative and be genuine, real allies, then reconciliation, as you've rightly pointed out, starts with truth-telling, and not only being aware of the history, the real history of this country, but being able to address the unfinished business, as I call it, of what are our obligations. We are living on land that is stolen. We benefit on a daily basis from that. Yes. And that means that we've got to reckon with all of those factors as we move forward. One final question, Sue-Ann. Beyond Yuruk, you're in the process of writing the report. What are you hoping will happen within the release of a report like this?
So our final report has over 100 recommendations in,
Wow.
you know, a range of, it's quite a big report. My hope is that these recommendations get picked up. You don't expect things to happen overnight because, you know, you want big changes. I think it starts a bigger conversation. It starts another, conversation for people to start to talk about what's happened in this country, and you know, that people start to understand that it's not just the past. The past is the present. It just looks different, right? Same things happening. Start the conversations, you know, start looking into, you know, our website is still there. Start looking at, you know, people's stories, and then how do you make a change in your little corner of the world that you control or you're in charge of? Connections with people. Like, there's a lot in these. We've had our other reports and this one. People are going to tear it apart. Good on them. Like, go for it. But it starts the conversation of things that need to happen, and hopefully they get picked up in treaty. Hopefully the rate of child removal goes down and deaths in custody, you know, is totally reduced, and, you know, all these things start happening. I don't know. Maybe that's just a big pipe dream that I have. The littlest thing I have is I hope it starts people's conversations around what has happened in this country.
Commissioner Sue-Ann Hunter, thank you for the conversation, the absolute honour of having a conversation with us today. As I say, words can't convey the depth of gratitude that I have for you and the incredible work that you do. I love that the past is the present. How we walk forward together, though, is equally important, and that as multicultural and refugee communities, acknowledging certainly our shared history, but never forgetting that the centering of First Peoples narratives is absolutely vital to our work. Sue-Ann Hunter, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.